So you can question whether Joe Biden actually got, what's the number, 81 million votes in the last presidential election, and actually later in the show we will. But even if you accept that there actually were people who voted for Joe Biden voluntarily, it's hard to believe that many of them got anything like what they expected in return for their votes. Joe Biden, not to be dark about it, just to be honest, Joe Biden has turned out to be an unparalleled disaster. That's not an overstatement. In fact, it's a generous assessment. Our country has never seen anything like what Joe Biden has done. Barely 15 months into his first term as president, Joe Biden has crashed the stock market, provoked a food shortage, opened our borders to millions of illegal aliens, presided over historic rises in murder, inflation, and drug ODs, as well as a corresponding plunge in overall life expectancy. And then, because all of that wasn't punitive enough for a country as racist as ours, he dragged the United States into an entirely pointless war with a nuclear-armed power on behalf of a corrupt foreign government that once bribed his drug-addicted son. That's all real. Joe Biden did all of that. And those are the big, easy-to-measure crimes he has committed. We spent virtually every night cataloging some of the rest. Shuttered schools, permanent looting, Latin American levels of wealth inequality, tampons in the boys' bathroom, $7 a gallon gasoline, unprecedented race hatred, homelessness, mental illness, suicide. And above it all, across the Pacific Ocean, a Chinese government that's laughing out loud as we destroy ourselves for no reason. That's some of what Joe Biden has done so far. He promised a return to normal. He's delivered war and economic collapse. Joe Biden is old enough, unfortunately, that he'll almost never, certainly, be held accountable for any of what he's done. But his party should be. How will any Democrat outside West Hollywood ever get elected in this country again? In a fully functioning democracy, that would be an honest question. But Biden has a plan. Torque up the fear, ban complaining, criminalize the opposition. Just 24 hours ago, Joe Biden, the President of the United States, told us that people who don't support him are the single biggest security threat that faces this country. Not Al-Qaeda, not the Chinese military, not the Mexican drug cartels, not even Russia, which we are told daily is the wellspring of all evil. No, you. You're the biggest threat because you don't vote Democrat. As Joe Biden put it, quote, this MAGA crowd is really the most extreme political organization that's existed in American history. The most extreme, the worst. Worse than the Klan, worse than the Nazis, worse than the anarchists who murdered an American president, worse than anyone ever. That's you. You're an existential threat to the country you were born in. It's hard to believe Joe Biden said that, but he did say it. And of course, some people believed him. Here's what the Supreme Court looks like tonight. You'll notice the riot-grade security fencing around the building. Why is it there? Well, it's there to protect the justices inside from the mobs that Joe Biden has incited with the demagoguery you just heard. Samuel Alito is a 72-year-old legal scholar whose views would have been considered ordinary, mainstream, maybe 5 years ago. Now, according to Joe Biden, he is a dangerous extremist. He's a member of a movement more threatening than any political movement in American history. What's the result? Well, today, Alito had to cancel a public appearance because there were too many threats on his life. Each one of those threats is, in fact, a threat to us and our country. You don't want to live in a country where Supreme Court justices cower in fear for their lives if they reach the wrong conclusions. That's the definition of a failed state. Turns out we have a Justice Department that exists to prevent things like this from happening. That's the whole point. But under Joe Biden, the DOJ is too beholden to the mob to say a word about it. You can't offend Antifa. They're a vital constituency. Here's the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, appearing today to tell us what he's worried about most. Watch.
Consistent with the president's executive order on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad, we are issuing a comprehensive environmental justice enforcement strategy. Communities of color, indigenous communities, and low-income communities often bear the brunt of the harm caused by environmental crime, pollution, and climate change.
Well, of course, the greatest threat is global warming, which, by the way, is racist, like so many other weather patterns. That's what Merrick Garland is most afraid of tonight. And of course, in order to fix global warming, which is existential, whatever that means, you're going to have to hand Merrick Garland and Joe Biden a lot more power over your life. Sorry, that's the only solution. Much more on that to come. But for now, here's what you should know. Merrick Garland didn't even mention the threats, the physical threats to this country's highest court, because those threats come from the left and therefore aren't really threats. See how that works? You're about to see more of it. A left-wing activist group has now published what it says are the home addresses of Justices Amy Coney Barrett, John Roberts, Samuel Alito, Brett Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, and Neil Gorsuch. Quote, "We must rise up to force accountability using a diversity of tactics," explains the group's website. A diversity of tactics. What are those? Well, you can imagine they already include disrupting Catholic church services. Not a big deal in order to change a Supreme Court decision. That's not an attack on democracy or anything. Merrick Garland is not concerned. Now, if someone were to vehemently criticize Oprah, that'd be different. We'd have to hold a press conference and call in the National Guard. But conservative Supreme Court justices, yeah, they deserve what they get. And so, of course, under these conditions, violence is already beginning. Abortion lunatics just vandalized a church in Colorado. The same thing has happened to a pro-life counseling center in Portland. In Los Angeles, demonstrators threw rocks at cops for some reason. What did they have to do with it? Who knows? War on the system, and they injured one of them. Went to the hospital. But Merrick Garland isn't worried about any of that. His fellow Democrats support that. They're calling for it. They long have. Here's Chuck Schumer from 2 years ago threatening mob action if any Supreme Court justice were ever to get out of line. Watch this.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You want to know what hits you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
You will pay the price? Really? These are people with lifetime appointments, so how exactly could they pay the price? We can't vote against them. What can we do? We can hurt them. We can harass their families. We can make it impossible to live in this country through threats of violence. Quote, "You won't know what hit you," said the thug from New York. Apparently they're about to learn what's going to hit them. Remember when liberals used to oppose violence? They did. Give peace a chance. It's hard to believe there was ever a time that was true. Maybe they were just pretending. In any case, they're now for it. Violence is their religion, here and abroad. You're seeing it on display right in front of you, whether you've noticed or not, in Eastern Europe. So rather than trying to save the civilian population of Eastern Europe, Joe Biden is pushing for a hot war against Russia. In fact, he's already engaged in a hot war against Russia, and so are we, whether we knew it or not. New York Times just ran this headline, quote, "U.S. intelligence is helping Ukraine kill Russian generals." Oh, no big deal. According to the paper, quote, "The United States has provided intelligence about Russian units that's allowed Ukrainians to target and kill many of the Russian generals who died in action in the Ukraine war, according to senior American officials." So they're bragging about it. And not just that. NBC News reports that Biden officials are also bragging about helping to shoot down a Russian transport plane carrying hundreds of Russian troops. And then tonight, sense the theme here? Tonight, the administration is saying out loud that actually it helped sink a Russian warship. Now, why are they doing this? And more baffling, why are they taking credit for it in public? Why would you tell people you're doing that? There's only one reason: because you want war with Russia. Not a fake war, not a proxy war, but a real war. With thousands of American troops, trillions wasted, and many dead. That's what war is. And war against nuclear-armed countries is hard to imagine. There's never been one. There's no reason to have a war like this, or doesn't need to be a war like this. We wouldn't be having one if Joe Biden didn't want one, but Biden wants it. He's doing this on purpose. We're not imagining that. He's telling us what he's doing. We're just ignoring it. Many Democrats are telling us what they're doing. Here's Biden ally Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts saying so out loud on Fox on Monday. Watch.
If they wrap this in the Senate with a Ukraine funding and a COVID funding, you guys okay with that, Congressman Moulton?
Look, I'm going to support it because it's the right thing to do for Ukraine. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of politics involved, and there will be domestic debates here at home about other policies and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we've got to realize we're at war. And we're not just at war to support the Ukrainians. We're fundamentally at war, although it's somewhat through proxy, with Russia, and it's important that we win.
Really? We're at war. Did you know that? Did they text you to let you know? Because wars tend to escalate, and wars that are existential for one side, in which the leader of a country feels he may die if he loses, tend to escalate very quickly, obviously. Seth Moulton isn't worried. It's just important that we win, he tells us. We? Really? Who's we? And important to whom, exactly? Is there anyone outside Washington who wants a real war with nuclear-armed Russia? Who exactly is Seth Moulton talking about when he says we? We were wondering, then we watched Biden. Yesterday he traveled to Alabama. and he visited the only constituency in America that longs for war with nuclear-armed Russia, and that would be his donors. He toured a Lockheed Martin plant. And as he did, Biden boasted that we're sending so many weapons to Ukraine that mothers in the United States are naming their children after Lockheed Martin's missile systems. Watch.
Well, we built the weapons and equipment that helped defend freedom and sovereignty in Europe years ago. That's true again today. Those Javelin missiles, like the ones manufactured right here in Pike County, they're highly portable. They're extremely effective against a wide range of armored targets. They can hit targets up to 400 meters away. In fact, they've been so important. There's even a story about Ukrainian parents naming their children, not a joke. Their newborn child, Javelin or Javelin, not a joke.
It's a joke. Just a little joke about weapons systems. You know, it used to be when American presidents talked about killing people, the first thing they did was make certain it was absolutely justified. We've been invaded, Pearl Harbor, 9/11. This is an entirely voluntary exercise. And the second thing they did was attach some gravity to the idea of people dying, because when people die, it's sad. They leave behind spouses and parents and siblings and children. Death is sad. Acknowledge that. They don't joke about it. Joe Biden considers that an uplifting story. Joe Biden is demented and he's dangerous, and so are the people who work for him. That's true. Sorry to say it out loud, but it's real. This country needs sane leadership, and it needs it immediately. It cannot come too soon. Pray the midterms are fair. Joe Kent will find out. He's running in the November midterm elections. He's a former member of the Army Special Forces. He's trying for a seat in Washington State in the Republican primary, and we're happy to have him join us tonight. Joe Kent, thank you. You just can't say enough. We're at war with Russia. The administration tells us we're at war with Russia, and I'm just wondering what percentage of the American population knows that we're at war with Russia and supports it.
I don't think any American knows that we are at war right now because Congress has not done their job. They've blindly authorized billions of dollars to go to Ukraine to exacerbate this conflict. We're allowing our intelligence community, without any kind of oversight, to brag now out loud that we're killing Russian generals, sinking Russian ships. We're taking every single action to provoke the Russians, to give them no other option but to view us that we are at war. And Congress has not respected us enough, not shown us the decency to come back to their districts and sell it to the American people and tell them that, hey, this is what this conflict truly is. This is what I'm going to need from you, the taxpayers. I'm going to need billions of dollars at a time when inflation is out of control, at a time when our southern border is being invaded. I need to send it overseas. And by the way, if things go wrong, I may need to send your sons and daughters off to go die in the bloodlands of Eastern Europe. Or if it goes really wrong, we will be in a nuclear conflict. But we don't have sane, rational people that care about this country or respect its people in charge right now. We are in very dangerous waters right now, unprecedented. We've never been here before, and there is no guardrails right now for what the Biden regime is doing to this nation.
And they did what they always do, which they shouted down anybody who asked questions. Defund the police. Shut up, racist. Does the facts work? Oh, you're killing people. Should we get in a nuclear war with Russia? You're working for Putin. And they completely emasculated the other side to the point where we just all went along with this and then kind of didn't notice it was happening.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And we have to understand what the game is. They're going to call us, in this case, Putin's stooges. They're going to try and shout us down. And we just, exactly, we don't care. We're going to come right back at them. This is what this new Republican Party, the America First movement, is all about. We're about putting our nation first and doing what's right for our country. We don't care what the other side says to us. They say, hey, we need to saddle up and go to war with Russia. We say, why? And absolutely not. And there's a constitutionally appointed process to follow. This needs to go to a war powers debate on the floor of Congress. No congressman right now should be authorizing one more penny to go to Ukraine. If we give them any aid whatsoever, we should be dictating to Zelensky that he should be at the table with the Russians trying to stop the killing. The intelligence community right now that's leaking this information, that's trying to get us into this war, these people need to be found out, held accountable, stripped of their jobs and their clearances, because they're pushing us towards a war, not keeping us safer.
It's too crazy. So when Toria Nuland or Joe Biden says, you don't love America, really? Right. Just laugh at them. Joe Kent,
Exactly.
You have, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
So the idea that political violence against your enemies is a new thing is not true. This has been going on. Another thing that we haven't called out explicitly enough, it's been going on for a long time on the left. Here's Maxine Waters from 2018 doing that. Here's just one example.
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
Yeah, they're not welcome in their own country. And the mob obeyed, because they always do obey. It's not the first riot she's called for, by the way. Go check the tape from '92 in Los Angeles. But it worked. So all of a sudden, Trump administration officials couldn't have dinner in restaurants and woke up at 3 in the morning and their kids terrified because people were screaming at them at their own homes. And that was totally cool. No problem at all. Over the next 4 years, Biden voters will go on to accelerate. They destroyed major cities in this country, firebombed courthouses, they murdered their political opponents. It's all just a dream now. No one remembers. Drew Hernandez remembers. He's one of the few journalists who bothered to cover that as it was happening. He's an investigative reporter, host of the Turning Point USA show Frontlines. We're happy to have him join us tonight. Drew, thanks so much for coming on. So you're looking at, almost in slow motion, Supreme Court justices being intimidated into changing their legal opinions. Sam Alito can't speak in public now, and no one's saying anything about it? Like, what?
Tucker, this is criminal cartel behavior. Threatening political opponents or any opposition. This is exactly what we see in third world countries when it comes to their politics. But this is the same playbook we saw in 2020. The far left, these politicians, Democrats, they gaslight their woke mob in order to mobilize them, in order to energize them to commit political violence, in order to literally get political goals done for them. That is literally domestic terrorism. They used BLM to do it. They used Antifa to do it. Immediately after the SCOTUS documents were leaked a couple days ago, I started to track Antifa on Twitter, and immediately Antifa was calling to terrorize their oppressors. And then they took to the streets in LA, they took to the streets in Portland, started to vandalize in order to do just that. This is part of the new normal they want us to accept post-2020, where riots are normal and only the far left could commit political violence to literally get a political point across. I'm not saying the right should do that. I'm saying it's clear that the deep state and the far left is doing this, and they allow it because they're all on the same team. Listen, and this is all about killing and murdering babies, but I guarantee you, Tucker, these people care more about murdering babies than they do George Floyd, and they're going to do more. You just watch. Abortion needs to die, and babies need to live.
I mean, I got to say, it's not even a partisan point. If pro-life groups were physically threatening liberal justices over an abortion decision, I would say you can't do that. That's an attack on the system, which has worked for like 250 years. You can't do that. And no one on the left will call these people out. It's beyond belief. Drew Hernandez, I appreciate your brave reporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've got an election coming up in November. Obviously, a lot hangs on it, as you can tell if you're paying attention. The question is, will it be fair? So it's entirely appropriate to ask, was the last election fair? Now, asking that question is something like a criminal act or something. But every American has a right to demand free and fair elections, period. So after the break, we're going to talk to someone who conducted what seems to us like legitimate and thorough investigation into what happened in the 2020 presidential election. And she'll tell us what she found. Stay tuned.